You're listening to the Shopify Solutions Podcast, a podcast for Shopify store owners that brings you concrete examples on how to build and grow your e-commerce business. My name is Scott Austin, and I have an e-commerce agency named Jade Puma. In this podcast, I'll share my e-commerce insights and best practices with you. Hey everybody, Scott Austin here, and this week I have a guest for us to talk to, and her name is Anita, and she owns her own company that she started over a decade ago now called Cool Jams, and they sell pajamas that are wicking pajamas. So they're made for people who maybe are a little bit sweaty or hot and want to stay cool, and her company's been very successful over the past decade plus. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Scott.
Can you first explain a little better than I did what Cool Jams, your product, is for our listeners?
Yeah, I think I can do you some justice there. We actually are we like to say we're a sleep solution company because not only do we have pajamas, but we also sell two collections of temperature regulating bedding. So we like to solve the problem of people overheating and sweating at night. And we kind of discovered, we first started just marketing to the menopausal woman. And now, as time has gone on, we've discovered that the market is much larger. There's men that get hot. There's people who live in warm climates, people who get night sweats because of an illness. There's so many reasons for temperature regulation issues at night. So we have tried to discover the solution, and we think we, have some great products that help people in that position.
And Cool Jams has been around for a while. How did you get started in the beginning? What is your origin story?
My origin story, yeah. So I'm a partner in a textile factory overseas, and I did have a lot of experience in the textile business, but I'd always been kind of interested in performance fabrics. I was personally having night sweats. This was about in 2007 was when I started doing research on this idea. And I thought, what if I found a fabric that could help me? And I figured that if I was having this issue, there were probably millions of people around the world that were also having this same issue. So I did a lot of research, found a fabric that was actually originally produced for the Canadian military that I tweaked it, I changed it, I made it softer, and basically turned it into a collection of sleepwear. And I tested it on people. We tested it in labs and found this fantastic solution for the problem of night sweats. So that's kind of the background story. I decided that I wanted to start an online business. And that's when in 2007 was when people were just starting online brands. And I thought, I can do this, and I just started putting one foot in front of the other. I didn't really know that much about e-commerce and e-commerce marketing. So I kind of feel like I've been back at university learning over the years. So yeah, that's kind of our background story.
Well, that's such a founder's story. The typical one: you had a problem of your own. You had an expertise that not everybody had, and you put those two together and came up with a unique solution and brought it to the market. That's sort of like the e-commerce dream right there. That's awesome.
Yeah.
How big is Cool Jams now that, it's been around for 12, 14 years now?
Yes. So first of all, I'd like to say that I started it as a lifestyle project, just thinking, this will be kind of a good hobby project. I'd kind of retired from my former job. I was sort of in a little transition and didn't really want to work too hard. So I started, and I've completely bootstrapped this company. I do not have any debt. And right now our sales are a little over 2 million. And we really started scaling about a couple of years ago when we moved over to Shopify.
Yep.
And Scott, you know all about that because you kind of helped us in that transition. And so our goal this year, we're projecting $3 to $4 million in revenue.
Wow, is quite a growth. So you've got this business that's been around over a decade. You're doing millions of dollars in revenue per year. How many full time employees do you have at Cool Gems?
One, that would be me.
Yep, that's awesome. And how many part time or contractors or outsourced people do you think are involved in the business?
That's a little bit of a difficult question because we hire a lot of groups.
Yep.
And for example, our 3PL, our third party warehouse, we have hundreds of people there that work for us. But I deal on a daily basis with one or two of them. So I'm going to go through just quickly the types of things that we do outsource. Okay. And that'll kind of give you an idea.
Hmm.
We outsource, like, for example, head of customer service. She's an outsourced individual that manages all the rest of the customer service people that we have. We have a call center and we have, several operators there at our call center. We have an online chat team. She would manage that. We have a Facebook/TikTok marketing manager. We have an AdWords Bing manager. We have, I already mentioned our 3PL warehouse. We have a design and production team. We have an inventory manager. We have a social marketing manager who manages all of our social channels. And we have web development. So those are the main things that we outsource. And I can tell you that I started doing a lot of when I first started, I didn't outsource anything except, assistance with web development because that wasn't my expertise. And slowly, as we started making income, I was able to start outsourcing a lot of the things that I didn't really know as much about or wasn't as interested in doing.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. And so you listed a whole bunch of different responsibilities or roles you outsource. Are there any that you think you shouldn't outsource and that you've personally, kept control of that would apply to every company, just not your personal preferences?
Yeah, I think just for me, I liked to be the center of the spoke of the wheel. So I kind of want to know. So the overall management of the company, yeah, you can hire an outside manager. I could do that. But I think, the CEO responsibility, the strategy for growth and aligning all these people, the general manager, that's kind of what I do.
Yep. Yep. And is there like a conscious reason why you've picked this outsource strategy versus hiring full-time employees, or did it just evolve organically?
I actually think it's you save a lot of money and energy by not having full-time employees. One of them is that, to hire employees in California, you have Social Security, all the just all the extra stuff that you have to take out of a paycheck. I've been there. I've had employees before, and I don't really want to manage people, although I do indirectly. The issue for me is that if someone does a great job, as a contractor, we're very loyal and we keep people on. If they do a great job, we will work with them forever. We are best friends. But if they don't do a good job, it's really easy to replace a contractor
Yep.
versus it's really difficult to replace someone that isn't working out. There's so many rules and laws. But you do have to be really careful with 1099 employees because we have some strict rules. So you do have to follow the rules about, what a 1099 or outsourced employee is. And one of the biggest things is that they cannot work solely for you, and they have to have, they have to have some other, people they work for, and they can't be doing the same thing every day, because then they could be classified as an employee. So you have to be, you do have to follow the rules, and we do. Every person we have working for us is pretty much their own boss. And I find that people who are their own boss, they know what it's like to be self-employed and they're super motivated to do a good job because they want to be paid for their work, you know?
Yep, that makes total sense. And how do you determine, that it's time to outsource a role that you've been taking on over time? How did you know when it was time to outsource and what you were going to outsource? Is there a threshold you hit?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I started outsourcing things that I didn't like to do myself or I was not good at. For example, customer service I did for a long time, but you can't always have the same customer service. It makes you look kind of rinky dink to have the same person answering, all the time. So I knew that I needed some assistance, and you can't always be there at your computer. So, with e commerce, you have a ton of customer service work. So that was one of the first things to go by hiring a call center, online chat, and then a person who is kind of head of customer service, but she also does some virtual assistant work. She does a lot of different things. But again, and then the second thing to go was all the marketing tasks. I used to do that all myself, but I knew that it's a lot of work, and it's gotten even more complicated, with more channels, and there's always new things to learn. And I figured that somebody else could do a better job than me. And even though I knew enough to be dangerous, I could carry it on. It was just too much for one person as we grew. And if we wanted to grow, if we wanted to scale, I needed more expertise. Web development I've never done because I can do a little, HTML to make some quick changes, but I am not a developer. So that was another thing. The last few things to go were, and 3PL warehouse that we've always outsourced. I've never shipped and packed. That was something from day one that we always outsource. I did not want to pack boxes and or manage, shipping and that kind of stuff. Some people do. We have volume. We have a lot of volume, and it just would be way too much for me to handle. The last thing that we actually really outsourced, and that was because we started growing and we needed more help, was inventory management. We're starting to use some tools. There's a lot of tools that you can use, but we actually hired someone to help us, with that. And design and production, I still have my hands in that a little bit, but the actual design and production is all done overseas.
Yep. And how do you find the person or company to outsource to? The idea of outsourcing sounds, totally appealing to most people, but it's really hard in execution, at least in my experience. How do you find those people or companies that are the good ones that you want to keep?
Yeah, well, that is a challenge. And I can't say that my first pick has always been great. Like my first warehouse, I'm not going to name the name, but they were a disaster. I think the owner was on drugs or something because it was just a disaster. And although no one is perfect, I think trial and error. And, the other thing is really checking references. Ask people for personal references, and not just one, but two or three, because, even hiring, any mistake you make, like, for example, picking the wrong warehouse, it's super expensive to move all your stuff that's sitting at a warehouse to a brand new warehouse and pay all the integration fees. So you want to make good choices. But I would say, don't just rely on what they say. Check references and see what their former employers say, and ask them the question, if you were me, would you hire this person? And they can't, I know there's certain laws against what you can say.
Hmm.
You might be able to skirt some of those, you know, yeah, would you hire this person today? And see what they say. The sites that I use, there's a lot of good sites to find freelancers, and one of them is Fiverr. The other one I use is Guru. LinkedIn is a great place to find people, and Upwork. If you are a Shopify site and you're looking for, like different apps or people to do things, They have a pretty good, they have their developers listed if you needed a developer, or there are a lot of people listed on in their resources. But I do think that look at people's reviews, look at see what what kind of referrals they have, and that usually helps. And make sure you call these folks and see, check up on them.
Yep. Do you actually require a conversation with them and like a video conference type thing, or what sort of communication screening you do with them?
Yeah, always we have a conversation. You can tell, and not always video. I would say that most of my contractors have been with me for quite a few years. Like I said, we're very loyal if we find somebody good. The latest one that I got rid of was my Google marketing group. I switched from one group to another, and it was a really bad decision. And now I'm with a great group, and that was done via video conference. It's hard to make a decision sometimes. And when I say group, sometimes I work with boutique agencies for certain aspects. If they're really good at one thing, I may hire them for that. I don't always just work with a freelancer. I've had that. I've also worked with agencies who do everything, and I tested that. But that, to me, in my opinion, that's a bad idea because nobody is good at everything.
Yep.
So for me, it's best to find a freelancer or a boutique agency that specializes in branding or specializes, for example, last spring we did a mini rebranding, and we hired a branding agency, and that's what they did. That's what they did other things, but that's what they were good at, and that worked well for us.
That's really good advice. Now, you mentioned, Fiverr and Upwork. Are there marketplaces or platforms, whatever you want to call them, that you've gone to that you've had, that you don't use anymore because they don't get you the results you're looking for?
Oh boy. I would say of those four, it's not always, it's kind of hit or miss. Some people have been good and some people have been bad. And that's where, it really, you have to do the research and have to check the references. I think it's super important. Some people like to use, there's like some sites that specialize in workers from the Philippines. I've heard those are good, but personally, I have never used them. But that might be another source. And sometimes just a simple Google search, looking for specialist in social media and see what comes up.
Yep.
That's worked for me too. So yeah, but I can't say that. I think there are good and bad on every site.
Yep.
I would
Yep.
not rule out one because I had one bad experience.
Now, do you have a preference for geographies, time zones, languages, those kind of things? Do you factor those in?
Yeah. So for customer service, I'm pretty funny about that. I really like US based native English speakers. I think for my target audience, it's super important. It may not be for other target audiences who skew
Mhm.
a little older, and that works well for us. So all of our customer service team, the call center is based in Utah, the chat service is based in San Diego, and our the head of customer service and some of the other customer service people, they're all based in California. So, and then as far as the other things, we do have a few people that are located overseas. My creative guy, who does a lot of artwork for us and ads and stuff, he is based in Bangladesh, actually,
Mhm.
and he's super good, super creative. He speaks English well. And then my head of not customer service, sorry, my head of Facebook marketing is a guy from India. Other than that, everybody is North American. So I don't really care about the time zone necessarily. I do care. I do need them to speak English. I speak a couple languages, but um, I don't speak any. I speak German and Turkish. So those two languages aren't so helpful for me in
Well,
speaking.
And your customer support being American makes sense to me also for cultural reasons. Like today, we're recording this. It's April 15th, 2022, and today is normally tax day, and it's not this year. The tax day this year is on the 18th for a
Oh,
bunch of different reasons, and it's Easter weekend, right? So
right.
those are just things that somebody from another country may not know about, and seems disingenuous if it comes up in the conversation. Like, you should be asked the question today, hey, you got your taxes done? But people from another culture may not know those kind of things. So
Yeah.
I find that cultural relevance is a really important one for at least customer support.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, for us, that has worked out well. I'm not saying, even Microsoft, big companies use people from overseas. Yeah, Amazon, we sell on
Yep.
Amazon, and anytime I try to call them for assistance, I always get somebody from overseas, and they're helpful. But it's not like speaking to your neighbor
Yep.
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the sources you mentioned that I want to understand a little bit better was LinkedIn. How do you go on LinkedIn and source potential partners?
For me, I would look for people in my network. I have a pretty extensive network on LinkedIn at this point, and first do a search, and it might be specialist in inventory or specialist in email marketing. Actually, there are two folks that I got via LinkedIn by just doing that. It would be San Diego. I did a search on LinkedIn looking for email marketing or Klaviyo marketing specialist, which is the email marketing tool that we use. And some folks popped up, and the guy that I use to manage my email marketing, he was one that I didn't mention earlier. He's a separate guy, awesome guy based here in San Diego. And he's really helped us develop our Klaviyo email marketing, remarketing, and all the other stuff we do, and SMS marketing. So that was via LinkedIn. And then my inventory manager, I found him via LinkedIn. And a third one I found via just by doing a search,
Yep.
basically.
Now on LinkedIn, these people that you're sourcing, are they freelancers or small agencies, or are they at a bigger company and you're just a weekend project for them?
No, all of them are freelancers, but some of them may have. It's actually both. For example, my email marketing guy, he works solely freelance. I think he has a listing on Upwork too. Sometimes I cross reference. I'll go to Upwork and find somebody, and they don't list the full name, but if it's an odd name like Jihan, that was his name.
Yep.
Um, he's actually a Turkish fellow that lives here in San Diego. And I went over to LinkedIn, just Klaviyo Marketing Jihan, and he popped right up. So, and sometimes it's easier just to work directly with somebody if you have a good feel for them and they have a good portfolio rather than going through one of these other channels.
That's an interesting point. Working directly versus going through the channel. Why would you prefer to go directly in some cases? What are the advantages there?
They can just bill you and you
Yep.
can pay them via PayPal. It's a little less expensive for both, I think, because, like for example, if you work through Fiverr everybody gets a cut, a commission. So if you can establish a long-term relationship and you're comfortable with the person after a few months, you can just like I just get billed and pay them, via credit card or whatever.
And are a lot of your vendors, are they by the hour or are they by the task? How are you paying?
I have most of them on retainers.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, because and you have to figure out what that makes sense. And some of them start off on the task, and if I like them, then we move to a retainer. If you trust, you have to have a certain amount of trust, but it usually starts off as a task. Okay, can you fix this? All our email marketing flows, go in, and they'll give you a price and you accept it. And then it's like, I really like this person. They were very conscientious. I would like them to do my weekly campaigns. So then we moved to a retainer. I'm trying to think back. Things like, your 3PL, that's just all billed on a weekly basis. So that there's no retainer or anything there. you have a contract and you have a certain set fees for certain tasks that they do for you. Production, that's all based on what is actually shipped, and you have your the design and all that is built into that cost. So it's kind of both, I guess.
Yep, yep. And when you're doing the contract directly, do you actually paper it with a contract and both parties sign it, or is it? Oh,
Yeah, no, it's like do this task, and when it's completed, you get paid. You
yep,
know?
yep,
No, I'm there's some contracts I have signed with small agencies. Definitely there are some, but if I'm working with a freelancer, there have been some, for example, our branding agency, well, they're more of an agency. I would say it depends on the person. We don't, and we will have, like, for example, I'm gonna the email marketing guy. He manages our flows, he gives me reports, he does 2 campaigns a week, and this is our agreement. And if he doesn't do it, then he knows that he would lose his position. I wouldn't
yep,
work with
yep,
him. His retainer would stop. So,
yep.
yeah.
And I like the less red tape method. And so that's in my next question is like, how do you ensure quality? You talked about, you're basically trialing them and slowly growing their responsibilities and gaining confidence. But is there measurements you put in place? Is it gut feel? How does that work for you?
That, other than getting somebody good to begin with, you don't have control over whether or not someone does a good job or a bad job, but it's pretty apparent very quickly if they're not the person for you. Like I said before, if somebody does a great job, I'm so loyal. I've had people with me for 10 years. If they do a bad job, they're out of here. I might give them, just say, hey, you like even if it was an employee, you'd have a chat and say, I need this to improve. We need this timely. We need, you know, whatever the issue is. And you give them one chance. And if it's not done properly, then they lose they lose that money. They lose that job, you know.
Mhm.
And some of we pay really well these people that are on retainer, and so they don't want to lose 2,000, 3,000 a month. Some of them are paid, a lot of money. So yeah.
That's really, it makes sense there. There's a mutual incentive for both
Yeah.
parties there. So, in all these years of doing this, do you have any like horror stories? Like, what can go wrong? What should people be prepared? What's the worst case scenario they need to prepare for?
Well, for example, if it's a small agency, COVID was kind of an issue. If somebody gets sick, there's no, they can't work, they don't have a backup person. So I would say illness, generally freelancers work on their own. They don't have any backup. So that is an issue. Whereas if you're working with a large agency or you have a bunch of employees, someone can cover for somebody else. That is a problem. So I would say that, for example, I started chatting about it before, our first warehouse that we were with. I didn't know enough to ask enough questions about them. They just had good rates and they were located in Colorado. And I thought, oh, that's not too far away if I needed to go there. But they were a disaster, a disaster. We had, and on top of them being a disaster, there was a tornado at our warehouse, and where all our stuff got flooded. This is when I first started it. Within the first 2 years, I happened to be overseas when that happened. It was like a nightmare, So that part, the flooding part, and the tornado that hit our warehouse couldn't have been, prevented. But I should have asked more questions about the ownership and their reliability on getting packages out. But I didn't. So the next time around, I did a whole spreadsheet of, probably 20 different warehouses and got recommendations. I needed their recommendations, from others, and we asked all the right questions because we knew what to ask because of all the issues we had at the previous place.
Yep,
So
yep.
sometimes you live and learn. So yeah, there are disasters. It isn't like, it hasn't been perfect. But yeah, I guess experience teaches you a lot.
Well, and that's so true in so many things, right? Like, the whole, what would you do different? It's like, I wouldn't have done anything different because I didn't know those things in the beginning. And I had to learn them to know
Yeah.
to do things differently the next time. And
Yeah.
experience is so important. So I wanted to have you on this podcast to explain to people how you can be a large, successful Shopify store and outsource a lot of the responsibilities. And you've done a fantastic job with that. And I appreciate it. And I love the fact that, your biggest recommendation that I took away was really do due diligence in checking your people, and the references being part of that, the interviewing process, the checking, their sources and all that kind of stuff. I love it. Is there anything else, as we're about ready to go here, that we haven't talked about that other Shopify stores should know about from your experiences?
Yeah. So there is a closing point I'd like to make, and that would be that yes, we bootstrapped. We're over 2 million in sales. I'm the only employee, but I do know that at some point I will probably have to hire some regular employees. You can go so far, and I think COVID really kind of, we grew so much during COVID because what were people doing? Buying pajamas and at home,
Yep, yep,
So that's when we really took a huge leap, and we've continued that growth. But I do know that you eventually I will have to hire some people or get some outside funding because right now I'm debt free. I have no employees, but if I want to grow and continue to grow, I will have to create a little more substance within because I can't possibly manage any more people or
yep,
any more team.
yep,
So that is and I guess it depends on how much you want to grow and how much debt you want to take on. It's pretty it's I guess it's a personal decision, for folks. But right now I'm the center of the spoke of the wheel. I manage all the contractors, and I basically do the stuff I like and hire the rest out.
yep. And that's awesome. So you can use outsourcing to grow to seven figures, but I'm assuming you're saying that to get to 10 figure or eight figure, sorry, you probably need to have some, full-time employees.
Yep, yep. I would definitely need to do that.
That,
So
that, that makes sense. Well, thank you for your time today, Anita. This is really helpful.
yeah, well, thank you. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope I inspired a few people.
Well, you have certainly given them some knowledge, and I'm sure they'll benefit from that. So thanks a lot.
Okay, take good care.
You've been listening to the Shopify Solutions Podcast with Scott Austin. This podcast is brought to you by Jade Puma, a Shopify-focused agency located in San Diego, California. If you like what you heard, please leave a review and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast.